In this lecture, we are going to learn what are different classes of fire, what are different types of fire extinguishers, and which fire extinguisher to be used on which class of fire. Fire is a process in which oxygen combines rapidly with fuel to produce heat and light. Fire requires three components to burn, and the removal of any of these components will extinguish the fire. These components are: number 1, fuel. Fuel can be any combustible material. It can be solid, liquid, or a gas. Number 2, oxygen. Oxygen needs to be in sufficient volume to support the process of combustion. And number 3, heat. The heat must be in sufficient intensity to raise the temperature of the fuel to its ignition or kindling point.
Therefore, fire is divided into 6 classes. Class A, fires involving ordinary combustible materials such as wood, cloth, plastic, and paper.
For example,
What we have here is a Class A fire made out of wood scraps in a partially cut drum. The drum's metal. We're going to let it burn for a minute, and then we're going to extinguish it with flame freeze and immediately touch the side of the drum and pick up a piece of wood to show the cooling properties in this product. He's going to extinguish it with a flame freeze, extinguisher. See here, the drum is cool to the touch.
Class B, fires involving flammable liquids or flammable solids such as grease, paint, oil, petrol, varnish, and fat.
for example,
What we're demonstrating here is we've got a Class B fire. He's hitting it with a powdered extinguisher now. You're going to see that the chemical will not put the fire out. It'll immediately reignite. So he's going over there with flame freeze now. He's going to demonstrate where he just shoots it in the middle. You can see the fire does not reignite. And he's going to go ahead and put the rest of the fire out with this product. Put the whole thing out. You can see it grabs the fumes and will not let it reignite like the powdered dry foam chemical in the other fire extinguisher does.
Class C, fires involving gases such as butane, propane, acetylene.
for example,
Class D, fires involving burning metals such as magnesium, titanium, potassium.
for example,
Class E, fires involving electrical hazards.
for example,
The connections gradually pull apart and overheat, burning the surrounding cable insulation and socket. This transforms the insulating material into carbon, which acts as a conductor and carries some of the current traveling through the wires, creating electric arcs. Eventually, the cable insulation and socket catch fire.
Class F, fires involving flammable liquids such as deep fat fryers.
for example,
What's the proper way of putting out a grease fire?
Easiest thing, put the lid right on top of it.
In the case of a small fire, you can also use baking soda. Oh, wow. But the safest and most effective way to put out a grease fire is with a fire extinguisher. And Captain Hamilton says, when using a fire extinguisher, the word to remember is pass.
You would pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze, and sweep.
A Class D fire should only be tackled by qualified personnel trained in the handling of this class of fire.
Depending on the nature of the class of fire, the best method for suppression may be one of the following. Number 1, cooling the fuel below its kindling point. Number 2, excluding the oxygen supply. And number 3, separating the fuel from the oxygen. These methods have led to the development of different types of extinguishers for different types of fires. Fire extinguishers could be of one of the following types: water type, foam type, dry powder type, carbon dioxide type, or wet chemical type. Water type fire extinguishers are used for Class A fire, and they have a bright red label. Water has a cooling effect on the fuel, causing it to burn much more slowly until the flames are eventually extinguished. Do not use water-type fire extinguishers for fires involving electrical equipment, kitchen fires, or flammable gas and flammable liquids. Second type of fire extinguisher is foam type. Foam type is used on Class B and Class A fire, and they have a cream label color. The foaming agent creates a barrier between the flame and the fuel, thus extinguishing the fire. Do not use foam type fire extinguishers for kitchen fires, fires involving electrical equipment, or on flammable metals. Third type of fire extinguisher agent is dry powder. Dry powder type fire extinguishers can be used in Class A, Class B, or Class C fires, and they have a blue label color. Dry powder smoother fires by forming a barrier between the fuel and the source. Do not use dry powder type of fire extinguishers for the fires involving cooking oil, fires involving electrical equipment over 1000 volt, or do not use them in enclosed spaces such as offices or houses. Dry powder fire extinguishers can also be used on some electrical fires, and specialist dry powder fire extinguishers are used for flammable metals. Thus, dry powder fire extinguishers can be used on Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, and Class E fires. Carbon dioxide type fire extinguishers can be used on Class B and Class E fires. They have a black label color. Carbon dioxide extinguishers suffocate fires by displacing the oxygen. Do not use carbon dioxide type fire extinguishers for kitchen fires, combustible materials, and flammable metals. The last type of fire extinguisher is wet chemical. Wet chemical type fire extinguishers are used for Class F and Class A fires. They have a yellow label color. Wet chemicals create a layer of foam on the surface of the burning oil or fat, preventing oxygen from fueling the fire any further. The spray also has a cooling effect. Do not use wet chemical fire extinguishers for flammable liquids or gas fires, for electrical fires, and for flammable metals. So, before you fight the fire, make sure you are using the right type of fire extinguisher for the right class of fire.